The ANC's National Executive Committee is meeting this weekend. The party's leadership is expected to discuss several matters, including its election manifesto workshop, the upcoming BRICS summit and the state of the economy, among others. Let's get some analysis with political analyst Professor Dirk Kotze. Thank you so much, Professor Kotze, for speaking to us on South Africa Tonight this evening. So a couple of issues on the agenda. Some of those big talking points, others will have been forgotten by the public, but certainly top of mind for the ANC NEC. What are you going to be keeping a very close eye on?
Well, they don't normally announce the agenda beforehand, so we have to speculate a little bit. But I think some of the important events that happened and that they will reflect on is, first of all, the ANC's Youth League conference that was held now. The new leadership will be attending this NEC meeting also. They have an ex officio position on it. Then there was also the Western Cape Provincial Conference after a long time. So these are two very important developments that the NEC will take note of and maybe discuss also briefly. Then there's the upcoming conferences of the Womens League that is for a long time now already outstanding, as well as the Veterans League. So it is almost a season of conferences for the ANC. Then, as you say, internationally speaking, the BRICS conference or summit, I think, will definitely receive some attention. But before that is the Russia-Africa summit that will meet very soon in July now. And then I think they will have to give feedback also about the NEC delegation under the leadership of the Secretary General Fikile Mbalula that went to China and that had quite an extensive meeting with the Chinese Communist Party there to deal with issues about bilateral relations between the two movements or organizations. So these I think are important issues. Then I would say the death of Eso Paat will certainly receive some attention at this meeting. He has been a long-standing NEC member and minister, especially during the time of President Mbeki. And then I think something which is will possibly also receive attention is the fact that in the month of July is normally the time when the mid-year the khotla of the cabinet takes place. And I think that hasn't happened yet, and we will have to see whether they are indeed going to have that meeting. But that's normally quite an important meeting of the cabinet, and they will have to report back later on to the NEC about that. And then coalition matters always continue. The latest one is the ANC's relationship with the EFF in Ekurhuleni. It means also in general in the Gauteng situation. That always receives attention. And then there's normally a briefing on the electricity situation. What President Ramaphosa does is that he normally presents a political report and the Secretary General an organizational report to meetings like this. I don't think they will discuss necessarily the Public Protector's report, latest report on Palo Palo. And I'm not sure whether they will go into the matter of the Chief Justice Zondo and Parliament. But that might be issues that can come up.
You mentioned the coalition situations being very likely to feature on the agenda. How do you see the ANC's relationship with the EFF evolving as we head towards elections next year? We know they are critical for the ANC should they not achieve the numbers they're looking for, but certainly there is some level of strife there.
Yes, I think there's some serious differences of opinion in the ANC about their relationship with the EFF. What we've seen is that the leadership generally in Gauteng is more in favor of a relationship with the EFF, but the rest of the country, and I would say including President Ramaphosa, is not necessarily so convinced about that type of relationship. What we have seen with the metros, especially in Gauteng and where the ANC and the EFF are working together, is that the EFF does not allow the ANC to take up the positions of mayor. And that's part of the complication, because the EFF is the kingmaker in these situations. But it does not allow the coalition relationship to develop into a normal relationship of coalitions in general. So they have this sort of trade-off of mayors from small parties like the ATM or Al Jamaa or others, which actually creates a lot of instability and discontent within the ANC leadership about this. So the relationship is one that is in a sense a necessity for the ANC, but it's certainly not one of choice. And it is something which I think in future in ANC circles will still receive a lot of debate and attention.
You mentioned as well the conferences of three bodies that took place recently, the ANC Youth League last weekend, the conference of the ANC in the Western Cape, and next week the ANC Women's Conference. And in a year preceding an election year, a lot of these bodies have to sort of fight for relevance. Looking at the ANC Womens League, do they still have relevance in South Africa, in our context? Because it seems that they are ever more quiet. We don't hear a lot of activity about them, and one wonders how they champion the rights of South African women.
Yes, I think you're very much correct about this, and your observation I share to a large extent. I think the problem of the Women's League is that they've become very much involved in the ANC's factional politics during the time of President Zuma, or even when President Zuma was elected, and thereafter the different national conferences and important events within the ANC. So they have become so preoccupied with the internal ANC politics, leadership politics, that they have forgotten about their own very specific mandate, and that's to focus on the issues of women in general. The same applies to the Youth League. And it is, in a sense, not only confined to the ANC, it is to a large extent the problem in the other major political parties also. That there is not a very prominent movement. For example, in the IFP, in the past, they always had a very strong youth brigade and a very strong women's brigade. But we hardly see that nowadays. So I think in that respect, it is something which women in general, I would say from a party political point of view, will have to attend very closely, because this is, in a sense, neglecting the opportunities that do exist in order to put the issues, and especially those political issues of women, on the agenda in general. And certainly in the ANC, they haven't done that in the last quite a number of years. As a result, as I said, especially because they have become either on the one or the other side in the factional politics.
Coming back to the NEC meeting, unity has been a clarion call for the ANC over the last couple of years, indicating that this is an area of great weakness for the party. Are we seeing any unity materialize, not only in the party's messaging to South Africa, but their messaging internally to each other?
I think what we are seeing is not necessarily the unity that someone like President Ramaphosa had in mind when he became the president. But I think what has happened, indeed, is that the factional divisions within the ANC have subsided to some extent. We don't have anymore a very well-established, organized, almost movement within the ANC who's in opposition to President Ramaphosa. What we do see is individuals who maintain these positions. Now the fact that Ace Magashule, for example, has been expelled from the ANC, that even weakens them even more. So what I'm actually saying is yes, there are differences of opinion, and there's not always complete solid support for President Ramaphosa, but it's not the same as, let's say, 5 years or more ago, where there was a very strong divide within the ANC on a factional basis between the different groups. And that doesn't exist. But as I say, I don't think the ANC in general will be able to claim that they have already reached the point of unity, as I said, as especially President Ramaphosa and his supporters would like to see.
Perhaps, though, President Ramaphosa being able to walk into that NEC meeting this weekend with a little more comfort and confidence than he has at some of the NEC meetings over the past year. We do thank you for your time and your insights. That was political analyst Professor Dirk Kotze reflecting on what's likely to happen at the ANC's NEC meeting this weekend.